Welcome to the Strategy Sherpa Show, a series of organic discussions between hosts David Chavez and a variety of notable business leaders centered around their most significant failures and how they handled those challenges, so listeners can learn from their most teachable moments and apply the lessons to their organizations. Now, here's your host, David Chavez.
Hey everybody, hi, this is David Chavez. This is Strategy Sherpa Show, and we have a great guest for you today. I'll introduce Dan in just a few minutes, but I just wanted to go over a few things with you. So Warren's going to be a busy little beaver at our office. He's got a webinar here this Tuesday that he's doing on the 7 ways your football knowledge can increase your business success, and he's tying football into business, which is one of the things he loves to do. So go and learn a few things from Warren about how football can increase your business success. And that's on Tuesday from 1 to 2 Central Time. And then we have Warren's going to be with me in Dallas, Texas, doing a scaling up workshop on December the 6th. And we're very excited about that. We have quite a few attendees coming to that. So if you're interested in that, we only have a few tickets left because we're sort of limited on the number of sizes that size of room we have. So if you're interested in that, you better get on our website, assuredstrategy.com events, and take a look at that and register for that. And then on the 14th of December, we're going to talk a little bit about processes. Preston, our process guy, he's going to do, but the process says I have to do what? So that's going to be a sort of good a workshop about processes and how to get processes put into your company correctly. And so those are the events that we have the remainder of the year. We'll have quite a few this next year. But I want to introduce Dan to you, and I don't want to waste a lot of time because Dan is an interesting guy all the way around. So I got to spend a little bit of time this last week with Dan, and quite the business leader, I would tell you, and quite the person, just a great person overall. And Dan, why don't you, Dan Gaul, this with Digital Trends, and it is a online. Is it just online, or do you guys print too?
No, it's just online. Yeah.
Okay, just online. They do a digital magazine on the tech industry, and I'll let him explain that a little bit more. So Dan, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you? Like, start off from back. Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? Things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Dan Gaul. Thanks for those kind words, David. I really appreciate it. I had a lot of fun with you this past week as well. I was born and raised in Tacoma, Washington. I always had a fascination for computers. My parents didn't have a TV in the house, so we grew up reading books. And when the Atari came out back in the day, me and my brother really wanted to be
yourself. You're dating yourself.
I know. We used to go to like J.C. Penney's and go play it, and we really wanted to get a gaming system. So we mowed lawns and did whatever we could to earn money to buy our family's first TV and an television gaming system at the time. That's super dating myself, but that led me to where I was to where I am now. So that passion for gaming and technologies, I started. I bought our first computer, again mowing lawns and just hustling, and I bought a Commodore 120. And started teaching myself programming. So I taught myself programming. I created my own bulletin board system, started trading games back then, went to computer camp in 6th grade, was a total geek. And then as, junior high kind of started coming through, I started skateboarding, and I skateboarded for, I don't know, like 15, 20 years. So my interest waned from computers. But when I got into college, it came back full force. That's when the internet was really starting to kind of pop, even though technically I was on the internet back in the day in dial-up, and working in the computer labs at the University of Washington. Again, teaching myself programming, web programming, JavaScript, Perl, etc., and paying my own way through university. I realized after 4 years that I wanted to go into computer science. My degree was mathematics, I was missing some core classes to get into computer science. So I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to keep going to school. I need to go back and actually maybe get a full-time job over summer to save up to get my kind of fun chest going. And I ended up getting a job at Microsoft. So I was on the Microsoft NNTP team, which is on the Exchange Server Network News Transport Protocol. On their test team, had an office full of Unix computers. And that was really where I don't know. I was just in love with everything on the internet and programming.
Yeah. So
that's my life.
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead.
I was just that was the beginning of that kind of life, right? Like figuring out what I could do, interest in how I can create all that.
So that passion you had from back before the skateboarder days came back with a roar once you got into college and things had advanced quite a bit, right? So what year are we talking about, like when you were in college?
So I graduated high school in 1992. So it was 92. I ended up at Microsoft in 1997.
So that's really when computers were just computer on every desktop was the BHAG for Microsoft, right? It was to get everybody using PCs.
For sure. Yeah. And Apples were huge back then too, but they were really expensive. And that actually, like at university at the UW, when I first took my first computer science class, they were using Macs. Right. And then I was like, oh, but I got to go buy a Mac. Right. So I went and spent I ended up having a student loan for like 7 years to pay off this Mac, 8 years after I left college. The next like quarter, they switched to PCs because Microsoft sponsored the computer science department. I was like, no. Okay.
The most expensive computer you ever bought in your life.
It was like $5,000 at the time, which should probably be like 15 nowadays. I don't know.
Yeah, most definitely. All right. And but you've lived overseas. Tell us about some of that too, because you have a colorful past.
Well, my son lives overseas now. So my wife is from Laos. Went back there she grew up here though. They escaped when she was 3, and they moved to the U.S. I travel a lot for work. We had offices in New York, Chicago, LA, and my youngest son right now is living in Japan for college as well. Yeah, he's lucky.
Yeah, but you've traveled all over Indonesia, haven't you?
Not in Indonesia. No.
Oh, I thought
confused.
Okay, maybe then Laos mostly, right?
Yeah, Laos, Europe. I've got on my wife's side, there's a lot of family in France, etc. Yeah, going to internet world in New York. I'm sorry, in London.
Yeah, I just remember talking to you about so many different places that you've been that it was I was going, man, this guy's just been all over the world. So, which is true. So you've been all over the world. All right, and then your son actually goes to school right now, going to college in Japan, right?
Correct. Yeah, we just moved him over there in September.
He speaks several languages too, huh?
Yep. Yeah. Started learning Japanese when he was 10. Taught himself some Korean, Dutch, etc. And my oldest as well. His plan was to study in Japan as well. He's got a degree in international business, and he was doing a minor in Japanese. And unfortunately, that was during COVID, and Japan shut down. So he ended up having to go to Ireland to finish out his degree, and that was unfortunate for him. But I think he ended up pretty happy being in Ireland and being able to travel across Europe.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your company that you're in now and how you came to be a part of that.
Yeah, so my business partner and I met in 2000 at a mutual friend's wedding in the line to get food. There was a merchandiser for Office Depot between us, and this guy had a mobile phone that wasn't on the market yet. And my business partner also is a complete technology nerd. Grew up in a family that was his father was a principal engineer at many companies. And he was like, "Where did you get that phone at? I've never seen that phone." And he was like, "Well, companies send it to me to test before we decide to put it on the shelves to sell." And he goes, "Man, I would love to get my hands on stuff like that. If I could only, get them for free and had a website." And I leaned over and I was like, "Hey, I'll build the website if you get the stuff in." And that's how we started. It's literally started as a hobby of just trying to get our hands on free stuff. And fast forward to 2004, 2005 was when we started making money. Our first advertiser came. We were like, "We can get paid for this," and had no idea how to actually do it. So it was a lot of trial by fire, making tons of mistakes, and especially back then, it was the wild wild west of the internet, and anybody small it was really hard for them to get off. It was dominated by large media companies.
Yeah. And what year was that roughly that you're talking about right now?
So we met in 2000. We launched what the precursor to digital trends was called Design Technica, which was super hard to understand what we did or even spell. And that was around 2004. And then in 2006, we launched Digital Trends. And that's when we just took off, right? And by then, people were like, "Oh, Digital Trends, I've heard of you." And then they had a better idea of what we did. Going to like the Consumer Electronics Show or talking to potential clients, they could spell the name, right? And weren't confusing us with some type of like design firm.
Yeah, yeah. I want everyone to know, Dan and his company uses Scaling Up. So you use Scaling Up for quite a while, and Vern Harnish came on our podcast probably a couple months ago, and he talked about how important the name of the company really is, right? And so it sounds like you guys made a little bit of a mistake with the name at first.
Yeah, we totally made a mistake with the name at first. And then my business partner thought of Digital Trends one night and was like, "Digital Trends, we should change our name to Digital Trends." We were able to get the domain name for really cheap, which was unheard of as well at the time. It had an overnight impact,
Right.
literally overnight impact. Even when we first changed, it was pretty recent. It was like in July. So July of 2006, and we would go to Consumer Electronics Show in January in 2007, and we're walking up the booth trying to get meetings, find out who their marketing PR person is, etc. "Oh, Digital Trends, we've heard of you." And like we're like, "Don't think you have, but awesome." Right. Yeah.
I think a lot of business owners don't think about the importance of their actual name and how important it is to connect with what they're doing. And Vern talked quite a bit about that. And matter of fact, he got a little passionate on the show with us because it was a mistake that cost him probably several years of time. And I think that you guys caught it early enough to where you made a big difference. And as you said, it had an immediate impact, right?
For
So
sure. Yeah.
good choice on name. And what do you guys do exactly? Just give us a real Reader's Digest. We got about a minute before the break.
Yeah, so we're a collection of publications actually. So Digital Trends is our largest one. And Digital Trends, the whole goal is to help people navigate the technology sphere, right? Technology can be very confusing, very intimidating. So we distill it down and help people make smart purchasing decisions, learn about technology, learn about potential passions, etc. So like the whole goal is help people navigate that ever increasing, confusing world of tech. And then we have basically verticals for the rest of like if you love technology, what are the other rooms in your house? Do you like to travel? Do you like cars? Do you like clothing? So we try to cover all those verticals for our user.
Okay. And so you have several magazines, but the primary one is the Digital Trends, that it's helping people learn about technology in a more simple way.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, very good. Well, hey, Dan, I appreciate you being here today. We'll look forward to continuing our conversation on right after this break, but and we'll learn about what you're doing. This is the Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez, and we're here with Dan Gaul, and we'll be back in just a moment. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey everyone, this is David Chavez, and this is the Strategy Sherpa Show. And let's just, at the Strategy Sherpa Show, one of the things we do is we talk to business leaders and mainly senior leaders about things they may have done not so well. And why we talk about these things is because entrepreneurs out there, they often think that they're all alone and that they're making mistakes all alone. And when you read a lot of business books or you see a lot of podcasts out there, they're all about how great everybody is. And they don't talk about some of the challenges that we have getting to that greatness. And that's what we're really trying to do, is talk about some of the challenges, not so we can rub it in the people's nose. It's basically so they can help you get through a challenge when you have it, by some of the decisions that they made to get themselves out of it. And Dan, let's talk a little bit about your challenge, because you had one that probably shook up your company quite a bit.
Yeah, it did, and it's an interesting one because it's not necessarily the learnings are very broad. They're not specific to like I need to specifically just myself work on something. But the issue, one of the huge issues that impacted us more recently was about 2 years ago, which sounds like a long time ago, but it's not in terms of this, which is we got slapped down by Google. Google releases algorithm updates, what used to be multiple times a year, and now they're just kind of continuous. But back then, kind of like multiple times a year, and you never know if you're going to get hit. It's always super nerve-wracking, and we got hit by one, and it was massive. Our traffic from Google, which is our primary traffic driver to digitaltrends.com and the rest of our sites, went down by about half.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, and it was within about 24 hours, on our organic, our analytics, we're like, wow, like it's just a cliff, super fast. And they always happen at the worst time. I think I might've been on my family trip with my dad, playing golf in Vegas, when it happened. So when that happens, it's like, is this a long-term thing, or is it they playing with something and it's going to bounce around? But no, it didn't come back. So that was a huge fire drill. And when it happens, yeah, go ahead.
This is a pretty big problem in the tech industry, especially people who have a lot invested in Google, because I've heard about this with another company I worked with that was very, very search engine optimization dependent. And all of a sudden, Google changed the analytics, and it took him probably 6 months to a year to even get it close to where his analytics were again. Right. So what do they do? What is it that causes this to happen? Because I'm sure people that aren't sophisticated as you are in tech, this happens to them sometimes and they don't understand.
Yeah, you normally, Google doesn't tell you, right? They don't tell you why. All they do is they publish guidelines around best practices. But at the end of the day, the number one driver is user experience and customer experience for the reader, right? And that is the number one driver. Now, Google puts out updates or algorithm change that might be specific. So they might do something that is specific for reviews. Like if you're writing reviews and they're trying to clean up the review results, or medical, right? If you have people publishing medical advice where they shouldn't be, they're not a doctor, whatever, and they're ranking, they're going to put out an algorithm update that kind of removes them or drops them down, et cetera. And then they have generalistic ones that they're always constantly updating. For us, it was a total mystery, because we pride ourselves in writing quality content, and people that don't or steal content, et cetera, they'll rise up and then they'll get smacked down by these algorithm updates. Mm-hmm. So it was these types of, they don't happen often for us. It's pretty rare, but when they do, it's devastating. And it's literally that knee jerk, like that's the thing that the first start is, don't have the knee jerk reaction, because whatever you do, traffic's not coming back right away. But the inclination is, we need to fix right now. Like we need, and then you start doing way too much, right? You cast a net way too wide, and you can end up hurting yourself even more. For us, it was a mix of multiple things, but the primary thing is a horrible user experience around, ads and ad type content, and there's other things like page load or how fast the site loads, how many ads are on a page. One of the big ones for us was video loading on top of content that wasn't related to the content. It was, we were trying to show, like if you're on a gaming article, you might get a video that's related to computers, but it wasn't related to what that piece of content was, right? So we call that unrelated content. It throws an ad before it, a little pre-roll video. Well, Google sees that as an ad. It knows it's not related. So what you're doing is you're getting the top of the site, an ad, navigation ad, this video, which is an ad, and then the content doesn't start until after you've already scrolled down. So that's a horrible user experience, and admittedly so, right? Absolutely horrible. So we had to relook at how we're doing things and go, what got away from us was we got complacent, right? We were following the dollar, like finding other ways to make money, still thinking that our quality content would, keep us in good graces, but it didn't. And so we had to go back and really, really look at the site and what we were doing and pull the reins in.
Yeah, so you had talked about you guys got a little complacent. I think this happens in companies as we start to do a little bit better, things start to quiet down a little bit as far as the noise with the employees and the growth and things like that, because I know you guys grew pretty fast, right? I mean, you've done fairly well with this company.
Yeah, we grew really, really fast. We have our normal peaks and valleys, but the peaks were always higher than the valleys. So yeah, and we were on growth trajectory. We were trying to grow. We were reinvesting all of our money into growth. So, and that's where that complacency comes from, right? You're looking at one side of the business on the growth side, but you're not looking at maintaining the healthy side of a great user experience and customer experience on the other side. So we sacrificed one for the other a little bit. And especially if you get away with it, right? Like that's the thing is, if you do something that is not that great of a user experience, it's usually not one thing that kills you with Google. It's the death by 1,000 cuts, right? Unless you're really bad and you're nefarious and doing something really bad. But what we did was literally death of thought. So, if we do this, like, let's try it and see what happens. Oh, nothing happens. Like, let's do this. And over time, all those things add up.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what you guys did, because I think complacency is a problem in all companies. I think all of us need a little rest every once in a while. We take our foot off the gas a little bit, and it makes us. But it sounds like you guys got better from what happened. That's probably the best thing that happens from some of these issues is we get a little bit better as a business about dealing with these problems. So let's walk through, what did you do to get your SEO back up? Like, how did you resolve some of this issue?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, that complacency doesn't happen just from on our side, didn't happen just from a few things. It was complacency, miscommunication, different teams doing different things internally, and from me and leadership getting complacent too, taking our eye off of what was really important, which again is our readers, right? So first it started with bringing in outside consultants, right? So like we can look at it all day long. We're going to have arguments and opinions and different ideas internally. You're going to have the SEO team being really, really, really strict. And then other teams going, we don't want to do that. It's going to impact my business, et cetera. So bringing in outside consultants. We brought in two experts in the field to take a look and give us overall, see the forest through the, you can't see it through the trees. So get that elevated look. Then prioritizing it and going, which ones can we do now? Which ones are more long-term? And then putting in real process. Like, okay, edit team, we're going to do this process moving forward. Sales team, we're going to reduce these types of packages we're selling. We're not going to do XYZ anymore. We're going to, you have to end up simplifying things and following a better process. And looking at how we were doing business and being okay with, you know what, we actually are going to make less revenue right now because we have to heal. We have to heal the site in Google's mind. And once traffic starts coming back, we'll actually make more money. Like, building a better user experience means people will click and read more content versus coming to the site and then bouncing, right? Like, oh, this is a crappy experience, or maybe going down half a page and leaving. We want them to stay, right? We want them to have a great experience. And the longer they stay, the revenue will increase at the end of the day.
So in the end, so what you're saying is as you started to fix it, what you ended up doing is fixing the whole offering of Digital Trends.
Yeah, fixing the whole offering and actually changing our mindset. We had to be self-reflective of what we were doing wrong and admit it. It's kind of like a hit to the ego or the pride, and also how you're talking to customers and even leaders within the company of, like, you know what, like, there's no blame or shame here. We just got we got lazy, we got greedy, whatever that is, that, like, we took our eye off the ball, and we just got to bring things back in. There was a lot of self-reflections for myself as well, like how communicating in a positive way that doesn't get people defensive, right?
Yeah.
So you're talking about people's goals and their livelihood, right? Like, you're setting goals and now you got to dial them back.
Yeah. You have all these initiatives, you have all these plans for the year, and everything changes in one moment. Again, I had another client that this happened to, and it took him a year. He lost a year off of his plan, just trying to figure out and get things back up. But, he said the same thing you did, that what it really did was it made him better, actually. And he was a little grateful for it happening. He didn't enjoy the timing of it all, like you being on vacation. He had a similar story. He was off doing something else, and he wasn't anticipating that was going to be his issue right now.
Yeah. I always try to take a look at the positive light. Like, I get beat up, the business gets beat up. Like, what is the learning opportunity out of this? Because if I always focus on the negative, I'm only going to project the negative, right? And instead, it's like, this really sucks. What is the opportunity here? And there's plenty of opportunity in it.
Yeah, and then I'll just say this, and then we'll take a break. But you got to own your own shit around this. I mean, and it's not fun. I mean, because you have to. I loved how you said you had to have a few conversations with yourself and, like, get centered of, like, hey, I took my foot off the gas and caused a big issue for my company. Right.
Yeah, I think the first knee-jerk reaction is to look for somebody else to blame. But at the end of the day, as a business owner and a leader, the blame falls on my shoulders, right? Like, everything starts with me, right? So I can't blame other people in that sense, especially something like this.
Yeah. So this is a Strategy Sherpa show, everybody. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Dan Gaul from Digital Trends.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
All right, this is David Chavez. This is a Strategy Sherpa show, and we're here with Dan Gaul from Digital Trends, and we're talking a little bit about complacency and how it spanked Dan. And there's no other way to say it, Dan. I always say, I love the one example that you gave, because I give this example sometimes when I'm speaking. When I owned my CPA firm, I spent about $100,000 hiring an ad agency to go get me some clients. And our goal was to get 100 new clients, right? And we end up with 96 new clients or 99 new clients, and we lost 96 while we were getting the 99. And I think you said it beautifully. We were focused over here and not focused over here, and it cost us big time, right? What it actually did was we were focused on the new, getting all the new in, and then we lost all the existing. And those of you who don't understand this, the cost to get a new client is tremendously higher than keeping a client happy, right?
Yeah.
So I called that a spanking, $100,000 spanking. And the spankings work opposite for business owners. It's money flowing out of our pocket, not into our pocket.
Yeah.
And it's not the money we want flowing that direction, right? So
yeah, it's so much easier to keep a client happy than to get a new client, for sure. I mean, like for us, we're competing with so many larger brands on content for us that you know, every person that we can get to the site is a huge win, you know.
Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about how you got how when you started fixing the problem, you really focused in on the customer.
Yeah, so again, I mentioned we take pride in the quality of the content we create, you know, and that's always like the forerunner of what we do. Like, we are amazing at creating great content, but there's a second piece to that, which is delivery of that content. And so the website is the mechanism, along with others, right? But you know, is a mechanism to deliver that content to people. And that's where we really, you know, well, that was part of the problem. Yeah, another problem was it all comes back to revenue, right? Like, so we're like, how can we increase revenue? How can we increase traffic? How can we increase the, you know, what we charge, et cetera. So, you know, over the years, we're like, oh, let's move these videos up to the top of the content. Well, actually, what we should have done and what we did do is, if this piece of content has a supplemental video, so if you're watching, you know, if it's a you know, Starfield game and we've created a video about playing Starfield, put that video on top, right? That's of interest to people. But if it's just a generic topical video, we move it to the bottom now, right? It's called, and before we didn't have a title on it. So this is a very specific example, but it didn't have a title for the video saying related video. It just was a video. So people assumed, and like Google, it would assume it's related. It's not. It's seen as an ad. Move it down. And if people are interested in it, they can watch video further down. So that is an example of the delivery of the content. What is most important is what they're there for, right? If I'm there to read about Starfield, you put that in front of them, and if all the other stuff around it, you got to make it like it's available and they can see it, but it's not in their face. The other thing was, you know, we have multiple types of content. We've got reviews, news, guides, how-tos, best ofs, and deals. And we were pumping out a lot of deals, and then that was one of the things we didn't have perspective on. We didn't know what the ratio of was between deals and normal editorial content. And what started happening was Google was starting to see us as a deal site more than as a content site, or at least that's what signals were starting to point to. And we're like, we do not want to be seen as a deal site. So that was another thing. And all this was coming from like those experts that, you know, we had hired, consultants that we had hired to take a look at the site, was like, what are we doing wrong? Where are the areas? Well, wow, you guys are creating a lot of deals content. You actually need to create the right ratio of that, not having those deals be so many being published. So it all comes down to, again, like customer experience. Like, if I want to go to any site, like, I don't want to be bombarded with ads. I want to understand what I'm reading. I don't want to be confused at any point in time. I don't want the page to load because there's so many ads on it. Navigating all those ads, you know, those sites I'm talking about, you go to and it's like, oh my gosh, like they're everywhere. And if you're scrolling, it's really bad. So focus on the user. You can do less ads on the page. People are more likely to click through because they're learning and they're curious, making sure that your internal links for that content is pointing off to something else as well that is meaningful for that content. So if I'm, again, like reading a piece of content on Starfield, you know, as a generic piece of content about just saying what the game's about, you should have links in the content that say, like, how to start a character on Starfield. What are the best weapons in Starfield? What are cool planets in Starfield? Here are, some really cool scenes, like everything, what we call is kind of like the ecosystem around that piece of content. And then, you can have deals around that, like, maybe like best PS5 controllers for Starfield or whatever that is. But again, you're not, it should be related to that content. It should be meaningful, and it shouldn't be too much.
Right. And I think that, and what is the overall outcome from this issue for digital trends on a whole, and you as a leader?
So the outcome should be um, looking at the bigger picture of what do we want, right? Like, and what we want at the basic sense is a successful business. And so what we don't want to do is be hurting the business. So you treat the business like a person, right? So I'm not gonna, walk out the door and go punch somebody in the face, right? So what I want to do is really be how do we get there? What are the best things? Are we too complicated? Are we trying to do too many things? Are we trying to grow too fast? Right. So, taking your eye off of the core business. So, one of the questions we had to ask ourselves is, what is our core business? How did we get away from it? What do we need to get back to it? And part of that process over those 2 years, and especially this past year, the word I've been driving as part of my drumbeat is simplify, simplify, simplify. Like, we are too complex. Every decision we make, we need to be thinking of, is this good for the business? Is this complex? Can multiple departments work on this or not? Right. So if it requires one special expertise, one person in the business, no one else can do it, that's probably something that's probably too complex. What we want to do is be able to have simplified process, easy to follow, easy to remember, and easy to do with multiple people.
Yeah, I love what you just said, because it sounds like what you did, what a lot of people do as they're scaling their company. Entrepreneurs, we're great squirrel chasers, right? And we get our attention gets deviated by the acorn on the other tree very easily, and we end up gathering all those acorns and bringing them into our tree hole. And what we find is that there's no room for us anymore, and we got to clean out some of those acorns because they're costing us a lot of money and a lot of time, right?
Oh yeah, and not only that, like, well, at least in our scenario, like, we always know about the silver object syndrome, right? Like you got, CNET and Hearst and all those guys. They have massive amounts of money and people to be able to try things, and we're like, oh, they're doing this, we should do this, and like shiny object syndrome. Like, nope, we need to stop. But we say that, but we still fall back into like, hey, maybe we should do this, but we don't have the people to actually see it through successfully. So we start something, and then it gets enabled on the site, and then it just kind of sits there and nobody owns it. And that's like part of the simplification process. Take it out. Nobody owns it. We're taking it out. It's not, it doesn't have a revenue goal. Take it off. Does it fit within what we're looking for from a margin perspective and an effort perspective? Oh, so much work for so little margin. Take it out. Right? Like, that's called, for us, complexity. Like, not enough people to really care about that, not enough people to really grow it into what it should be, or maybe it was just a bad decision.
Yeah, most definitely. So Dan, we're getting ready to close out this segment of the show, and I just wanted to thank you for coming on. Is there any last insights that you wanted to give anybody for what you've learned around this?
Yeah, look, and this is kind of a plug for you, I would say, but we started doing scaling up probably about 15 years ago, and we would not be where we're at without following the scaling up process. And in fact, I'm a coach. I've been a coach within the entrepreneurs organization for smaller companies, and helping them start the basics of some of the scaling up process. And me doing that with them has benefited me again, right? Like, so going through some of these forms and thinking about, what is our core value of the business, and setting like my own 3 goals and things like that really helps kind of reinforce a better process and practice. So to me, that's been critical for our business.
Yeah, and I love that you say that, because I think that scaling up companies still make mistakes, right? We're not different, but the way that we approach fixing the mistake may be a little bit different because of what we learned. And it sounds like you use some of that, like, hey, who's our core customer? What do they need from us? And let's get the garbage out of the way that they don't really need from us, that that are all these wants that seem to accumulate over time, too many acorns in the tree, right? And get all that stuff out.
Yeah, and it's something for us that the reason I said 10 to 15 years was, it wasn't like you learn it once and then you just go. Like, it was continuous integration, continuous working on it, where it starts becoming kind of like a back of the mind process, but it's good. I've realized that it's good to approach again. Basically what I'm trying to say is, we went from a very executive focused training of scaling up to moving it out to the whole company. We had our leaders, middle management, and other people get trained on it, and us start stepping back and relying more on them of doing it. But it's always good to come back around and remind yourself, oh, you know what, some of this stuff has just been second nature, and some of these things I need to think about again.
Yeah. Well, hey, Dan, I really appreciate you coming on today and sharing a little bit of your success and some of the things that have challenged you. I know that's not going to define you. It's just a boulder in your journey. So just knowing you, and I really appreciate you coming on today. And I met Dan, everybody, at an EO Next event, which is a unique concept through EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. So if you're interested, check out Entrepreneurs Organization. But Dan, thank you for your time today. And this is the Strategy Sherpa Show, and we will be back after these messages.
Welcome back to the Strategy Sherpa Show with David Chavez. Have a question for David or his guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Now, back to the show.
Hey everyone, this is David Chavez. This is a Strategy Sherpa Show, and we just got finished with Dan Gaul, and he was talking a little bit about his SEO problem, but he crept into some other problems that he had. And I want to talk about a few things with that, but I wanted to show you, because you've been hearing a little bit about our one of our sponsor, Volato, and I wanted to show you something that they came up with. This is a private aviation company, and they came up with this really interesting app, and it's called Flyvant. And here it is right here, Flyvant. And what they do is they list all of their empty legs on all of their from all their airline across the United States, and where the empty leg is going to. And this app costs $1,000 to join, and for 1 year you get to fly any of these empty legs for free. So I was down in Phoenix. I was at a board meeting with a bank that I work with, and I needed to get up to Vegas. And I just looked at the app that morning. I had a regular flight already booked, but there was a flight at 3:30 leaving from Phoenix, actually Scottsdale Airport, heading to Vegas. And I was able to jump on that for free because I had paid the $1,000 for this app. So if you are really interested in private aviation experience, and you've never gotten to fly on a private jet, I actually got to fly on a Honda jet, and it was really sort of cool. And I was the only one on the jet. So that jet would have just flew empty, and I got to be on it. So great idea for your business, or if you just are open to flying somewhere that you've never been before. It's a really cool app. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that Dan said, because I think it coincides a lot with what we do for companies and how we help them. And one of the things I wanted to do is share my screen with you and show you. Oh, I don't have screen sharing ability, huh? That's interesting. I thought I was the host on this thing, and I guess I can't share my screen, so I'm not going to share my screen. So we have this core customer form, and what he's talking about is who is your customer and what do they really need from you. I think oftentimes when we start a company, we want to do everything for our customer, and what we end up doing is we keep on adding more and more and more to our plate, which becomes harder for us to deliver on as an organization. We're basically spreading our resources out too thin. And so what ends up happening is that we end up losing focus of who our core customer is. And it was interesting because I was with a group of leaders last week with the EO event I was with Dan at. And for one of the groups, I asked them who is their core customer. And all of them in the group, as we went around the table, all of them gave me like an industry or a company or type of company or things like that. But the core customer is not a company. It's an individual that works into that company that you sell your services to. And that individual has needs and wants. And are we meeting those needs of that core customer? That's the real issue that oftentimes we get lost in. We try to serve all the wants of the customer and we forget about the specific needs of the customer. And so what I guess I can share now. I've been given permission by the sharing gods. So I'll share this tool that we have where we start to think about the customer in a little bit different way. So here's the details. So we have the core customer. We have the description of the core customer. Who is the individual at that company that you sell to? What are their personal characteristics? You know, a little bit about them and how they act and behave. Their needs, not their wants. And again, we can customers will want you to death in the end. So you have to really focus in on delivering their needs. And then the wants, you can't necessarily ignore the other wants. You have to create solutions for them. And the easiest way for me to explain this when I'm speaking publicly is to look at Southwest Airlines and look at the meals, right? They don't serve meals. Their core customer may want a meal, but doesn't need a meal. And so they don't offer meals. Now, what they've done, and if you look at their business model for years up to recently, if you went around a Southwest terminal at an airport, you would see a lot of restaurants around there. And what they have is they satisfied the want of maybe you want a meal by providing you opportunities to get your food before you get on the airplane. And Southwest has been rather clear with this. So they're managing their customers' expectations or their wants by delivering it through their business model, restaurants close to their gates, so that the customer can satisfy the want while Southwest satisfies the need. I want to be home for my kid's soccer game. So if you think about that in that sense, it really starts to help you get clarity. If I'm going to satisfy every want, I'm going to kill myself in mediocrity. And if I really focus on the needs, I'm really going to help my business quite a bit. And so we use this form, the insights of telling their story. How are they buying? What do we want them to feel, think, do? So if you're interested and you want to get our core customer details sheet, just email info@Assured Strategy and request the core customer details sheet, and we'll send it over to you. And you can start to think a little bit about your customer and who it is that you're really trying to attract. Hey, I just wanted to remind you, on Tuesday, Warren is doing the football and 7 things that you know about football that could apply to your business. That's at 1 p.m. Central Time. And then in December, later in December on the 6th, we'll be doing a scaling up workshop in Dallas. It's very close to being sold out. We only have, if I remember, there was only 3 or 4 more tickets left. We strongly encourage you to get on there and buy them soon. And we look forward to seeing you in Dallas. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about scaling up and how it applies to your company. And then later in the month, I think the following Tuesday, we're going to have a webinar about processes, and that will be Preston Law, who will be doing that. And he is a new member to our team, but Preston and I go way back because we actually worked together. He worked for one of our clients that we helped sell their business after we helped them scale up. And here it is, probably 6 years after that transaction took place, Preston and I are working together. So it's really exciting having him here on the team and adding to our team. So I wanted to go over one last thing that Dan said, a complacency. All of us end up in complacency at one time or another. We take our foot off the gas. We don't do something we're supposed to. But how do we keep complacency out? Jim Collins talks about this in the Good to Great book of healthy skepticism. I always want to have healthy skepticism of what's going on in my company. And or I think he calls it healthy paranoia. Excuse me, I changed it to skepticism. But I always want to keep that. And so I'll leave that thought with you today. And I appreciate you coming and visiting us at Strategy Sherpa Show. This is David Chavez, where we talk about things we didn't do so well in our business and what we did to overcome those things on this show. Thank you. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week.